Doctor sat in her small office on New Geneva Colony, looking at data from her latest research project. She studied how different alien species communicated with each other. Her work was important but quiet. Most days, nothing exciting happened on the colony. The morning started like any other. Drank her coffee and checked the reports from her research team. They had found some interesting patterns in the radio signals from a nearby star system. The signals seemed too organized to be natural, but not quite like any known language. Then the alarm started. Looked up from her computer screen as red lights flashed throughout the research building. The emergency alert system rarely went off. When it did, it usually meant incoming asteroids or solar storms. But this alarm sounded different. It was the deep, long tone that meant unknown contact. She ran to the main communications center. Other scientists and technicians were already there, staring at the huge display screens. Director Santos stood in the middle of the room, his face pale. "What is it?" asked. "Look for yourself." Santos pointed at the largest screen. Gasped. The screen showed something she had never seen before. A massive object was moving toward their solar system. It was not a ship in any normal sense. The thing looked alive. Its surface moved and shifted like skin. Strange patterns of light danced across its hull. "How big is it?" whispered. "About 15 kilometers long," answered Dr. Park from the sensor station. "Maybe 6 kilometers wide, but the readings are strange. Our sensors can't figure out what it's made of." Watch the object on the screen. It moved smoothly through space, not like a machine but like a swimming creature. Beautiful colors flowed across its surface in waves: blue, green, purple, gold. The patterns seemed too organized to be random. "Have we tried to contact it?" she asked. "Of course," Santos replied. "We've sent signals on every frequency we know. Radio, laser, quantum, nothing. It doesn't answer." Studied the creature more carefully. Something about its movement reminded her of something, but she couldn't place what. The way it moved through space looked familiar somehow. Hours passed. The creature came closer to the colony. When it reached the outer edge of the solar system, it finally did something. But it was not what anyone expected. The creature moved toward Mining Station Alpha. The station collected rare metals from asteroids. It was completely automated, with no people on it. Watched as the creature reached out with what looked like tentacles made of the same living material as its body. "Is it attacking?" someone asked. "Wasn't sure." The creature touched the mining station very gently. Then, piece by piece, it took the station apart. Not with violence or explosions, but carefully, like someone taking apart a puzzle. Each piece disappeared into the creature's body. "Why would it want our mining equipment?" Dr. Park wondered out loud. "Maybe it needs the metals," suggested. "Or maybe it's studying our technology." The creature finished with Mining Station Alpha and moved toward Station Beta. It did the same thing again. Gentle, careful, complete. Then it moved toward Station Gamma. "We need to evacuate," Director Santos announced. "If that thing keeps moving toward the colony, we could be next." Didn't think the creature wanted to hurt them. Its actions seemed too careful, too precise. If it wanted to destroy things, it could have blown up the stations with energy weapons or just crashed into them. Instead, it was taking them apart like a scientist studying samples. "Wait," said, "look at the patterns." She pointed at the creature's skin. The lights moving across its surface had changed. They were brighter now and they moved faster. "The patterns are different," she explained. "When it first arrived, the lights moved slowly. Now they're faster and brighter." "What does that mean?" Santos asked. "I don't know yet, but look." Pulled up recordings from when the creature first appeared. The lights started slow and blue. Now they're fast and more yellow-green. It's like the creature's emotional state is changing. Dr. Park laughed, but not in a happy way. "Emotional state? It's probably just a machine, a very advanced one." Shook her head. Machines don't have skin that changes color, and look at how it moves. It's not following straight lines like ships do. It curves and flows like something alive. The creature finished with the third mining station and paused. For several minutes, it hung motionless in space. The light patterns on its skin continued to shift and change. Watched carefully, trying to understand what she was seeing. Then she realized something important. The creature's movements reminded her of whales. She had studied whale behavior years ago, before she became interested in alien communication. Whales moved through water the same way this creature moved through space. Smooth, flowing, graceful. "I think it's an animal," announced. "What?" Santos stared at her. "A space-dwelling creature. Maybe it evolved in the vacuum between stars. Look at how it moves, how its skin changes color. This isn't a ship, it's a living being." The creature began moving again, this time toward the colony's orbital platforms. These platforms were bigger than the mining stations. They had defensive weapons and energy shields. If the creature was hostile, they would find out soon. Watched the creature approach Platform 1. Her heart raced as she waited to see what would happen. If she was wrong about the creature being peaceful, a lot of people might die. The creature reached the platform and began the same gentle dismantling process. The platform's automatic defenses activated, shooting energy beams at the creature. But the beams just disappeared when they hit the creature's skin, like water soaking into a sponge. "The weapons aren't working," Dr. Park reported. "The creature is absorbing the energy somehow." Felt excited and worried at the same time. If the creature could absorb their weapons, they had no way to stop it. But also, this proved her theory. The creature was definitely alive, not mechanical. As she watched the creature work, noticed something else. The light patterns on its skin had changed again. They were brighter and faster than before. If her theory was correct, the creature was becoming more agitated. "We need to contact the military," Director Santos said. "This is beyond our ability to handle." Agreed they needed help, but she wasn't sure the military was the right kind of help. If the creature was a living being, shooting at it would only make things worse. What they needed was a way to communicate with it. She looked at the beautiful patterns of light dancing across the creature's skin and wondered if they might be trying to tell them something. 3 days later, the Terran Defense Force arrived at New Geneva Colony. Watch from the observation deck as 12 military ships appeared near the edge of the solar system. They moved in perfect formation, their hulls dark and threatening against the stars. Admiral's flagship was the largest ship had ever seen. The TDF Vengeance stretched over 2 kilometers long and carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Had read about ships like this, but never expected to see one. "Finally," Director Santos said, standing beside her, "now we can deal with this creature properly." Felt worried. She had spent 3 days studying the creature's behavior. It had dismantled 8 more orbital platforms, but it still moved carefully and gently. It never destroyed anything completely. It just took them apart and absorbed the pieces. "I don't think fighting it is a good idea," told Santos. "Why not? It's destroying our property." "But it's not hurting anyone. All the platforms were automated. No people have died." Santos looked at her strangely. "That thing has destroyed millions of credits worth of equipment. We can't just let it continue." Understood his point, but something felt wrong about attacking the creature. Its behavior reminded her more of a lost animal than an invader. A lost, hungry animal. Admiral contacted the colony's communication center an hour later. His face appeared on the main screen, stern and confident. He had gray hair and old scars on his face that showed he had fought in many battles. "Director Santos," the Admiral said, "I've reviewed your reports about the alien creature. My fleet will eliminate the threat within 24 hours. "Thank you, Admiral," Santos replied. "We're grateful for your help." Stepped forward. "Admiral, I'd like to share some observations about the creature's behavior." His eyes focused on her. And you are? Doctor and cultural anthropologist. I've been studying the creature since it arrived. I believe it might be trying to communicate. Doctor, I appreciate your scientific interest, but this is now a military matter. Please stay out of the way while we handle the situation. The screen went dark. Felt frustrated. She had important information, but no one with power wanted to listen to her. The military attack began at dawn the next day. Watched from the colony's main observatory as Admiral's ships moved toward the creature. The alien being was currently near Mining Station Delta, continuing its careful dismantling work. The first wave of attacks came from the destroyers. Plasma torpedoes streaked through space, leaving bright trails behind them, held her breath as the weapons approached the creature. The torpedoes hit the creature's skin and simply disappeared. There were no explosions, no damage. The energy weapons were absorbed just like the defensive fire from the orbital platforms. Direct hit, no effect, heard over the military radio frequency. Target is undamaged. Admiral's voice crackled through the speakers. Use quantum disruptors, maximum power. The next wave of weapons was different. Quantum disruptors twisted spacetime itself, creating areas where matter couldn't exist normally. Had read about these weapons but never seen them used. The disruptors hit the creature and created strange ripples in space around it. For a moment, thought they might work. Then the ripples faded and the creature continued its work as if nothing had happened. But something had changed. The light patterns on the creature's skin were different now. Instead of the slow, gentle waves had observed before, the lights were flashing rapidly. Bright reds and oranges mixed with the blues and greens. The creature's movements became faster and less smooth. It's getting upset, whispered to herself. Dr. Park heard her. What did you say? The creature, look at the light patterns on its skin. They're faster and more intense. I think our attacks are making it angry. Angry? Park shook his head. You can't apply human emotions to an alien creature. Before could answer, something new happened. The creature suddenly stopped dismantling the mining station. It turned toward Admiral's fleet and began to move. But this movement was different from its earlier gentle flowing. Now it moved with purpose and speed. All ships, evasive maneuvers, Admiral's voice commanded. Target is approaching at high speed. The creature reached the nearest destroyer in seconds. Watched in horror as the alien being wrapped around the military ship like a giant hand. The destroyer's hull cracked under the pressure. Air and debris leaked into space. Mayday, mayday, came the panicked voice of the destroyer's captain. We're losing hull integrity, requesting immediate assistance. The other ships opened fire on the creature, but they had to be careful not to hit their own vessel. Their weapons still had no effect on the alien's skin. The creature squeezed harder and the destroyer broke apart. The crew escaped in emergency pods, but their ship was destroyed. Felt sick. This was exactly what she had been afraid would happen. The creature had been peaceful until they attacked it. Now it was defending itself. Fall back to position 2, Admiral ordered. Prepare the Nova bombs. Knew about Nova bombs. They were the most powerful weapons humans had ever built. Each one could crack a planet's surface. If they used those weapons here, they would definitely kill the creature. They might also damage the colony. The creature moved toward the second destroyer. This time, instead of grabbing the ship, it did something else. Watched in amazement as the creature's skin began to glow brighter and brighter. Then beams of pure energy shot out from its surface. The energy beams cut through the destroyer's armor like a knife through paper. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash. This time, not all of the crew escaped. What the hell was that? Someone shouted over the radio. Realized the creature had just used the energy it absorbed from their previous attacks. It had stored their own weapons and fired them back. This wasn't just a peaceful animal. It was intelligent enough to learn and adapt. The remaining military ships retreated to a safe distance. could hear Admiral talking with his officers, planning their next move. They were discussing planet-killer weapons now, bombs that would destroy the creature but might also damage the colony. "We have to evacuate the colony," Director Santos announced to everyone in the observatory. "The Admiral is preparing to use Class 7 nuclear devices. The radiation will make this system uninhabitable for decades." Felt desperate. The creature had been trying to survive, and now they were planning to kill it with weapons that would poison an entire solar system. There had to be another way. She looked at the data from her sensors. The creature was floating motionless again, about halfway between the military fleet and the colony. Its light patterns were still intense, but they had changed. The angry reds and oranges were fading. Now she saw what looked like waves of blue and purple. "It's calming down," said out loud. "What?" Santos asked. "The creature, look at the colors on its skin. It's not angry anymore. It's—" paused, trying to find the right words. "It's sad. I think it's sad." Santos stared at her. "Sad about what?" "About the fighting, about having to hurt our ships. Look at how it's moving now. Slow and careful again, like when it first arrived." Was forming a new theory. The creature hadn't wanted to fight. It had only defended itself when they attacked it. And now, seeing the destruction it had caused, it was showing what looked like regret. "I need to try something," said. "What do you mean?" "I need to try to talk to it." Dr. Park laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "How do you talk to something like that?" Looked at the beautiful, sad patterns of light moving across the creature's skin. She had studied communication her whole life. Every species had some way to share information with others of their kind. Maybe this creature's skin was how it talked. "I don't know yet," admitted, "but I have to try." The evacuation alarm echoed through New Geneva Colony as ran back to her laboratory. Most people were packing their belongings and heading to the transport ships, had different plans. Director Santos called after her. "Where are you going? The evacuation shuttle leaves in 2 hours. "I'm staying," replied without slowing down. "That's impossible. Admiral will use the Nova bombs tomorrow morning. This entire system will be radioactive." Stopped and turned to face Santos. "Then I have 18 hours to figure out how to talk to that creature. Maybe if I can communicate with it, we won't need the bombs." Santos stared at her like she had lost her mind. "Be realistic. You're talking about first contact with an alien intelligence. That takes years of preparation, teams of experts, careful protocols." "We don't have years, we have hours." Continued toward her lab. Behind her, she could hear Santos talking into his communication device, probably reporting that she was refusing to evacuate. She didn't care. Something about the creature's behavior convinced her that communication was possible. This laboratory contained the colony's most advanced communication equipment. She had built much of it herself for her research into alien languages. Now she hoped it would help her save both the colony and the creature. She pulled up all the sensor data they had collected since the creature's arrival. Hours of recordings showed the light patterns moving across its skin. Had watched these patterns many times, but now she looked at them differently. "Computer, analyze the light pattern frequency changes in recording section Alpha 7. The computer processed the data and displayed it as a graph. Saw something interesting. The light patterns weren't random. They followed mathematical sequences. "Computer, compare these patterns to known mathematical progressions." Patterns match prime number sequences with 73% accuracy, the computer announced. His heart started beating faster. Prime numbers were one of the most basic mathematical concepts. They were often used in science fiction stories as a way for alien species to prove their intelligence. But this was real. "Show me the sequence," commanded. The computer displayed the numbers: 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23. But then noticed something strange. The sequence was going backward. Instead of getting larger, the numbers were getting smaller. Computer, show the complete sequence from the creature's arrival until now. A long list appeared on the screen. The creature had started with very large prime numbers when it first arrived. Over the past few days, the numbers had been getting smaller and smaller. Now they were down to single digits. "It's a countdown," whispered. But a countdown to what? Studied the pattern more carefully. The decreasing numbers reminded her of something from her biological research. She had seen similar patterns in animals that were stressed or dying. Pulled up her files on Earth's marine life. When whales were sick or injured, their song patterns changed in predictable ways. The songs became simpler and more desperate as the whales got weaker. "Oh no," said out loud. "It's not counting down to an attack, it's dying." This changed everything. If the creature was dying, then its behavior made perfect sense. It wasn't dismantling their orbital stations to attack them. It was trying to get something it needed to survive. Looked at the list of destroyed platforms and mining stations. What did they all have in common? She pulled up their technical specifications and ran them through her computer. "Computer, what materials were commonly found in all the destroyed facilities?" Common elements include titanium, platinum, and exotic matter particles used in quantum processing. Had heard of exotic matter before. It was a theoretical form of matter that existed in the space between stars. Scientists thought it might be what dark matter was made of, but humans had never found more than tiny traces of it. The creature needs exotic matter to survive, realized. It's trying to find enough to keep itself alive. This explained why the creature had been so careful in dismantling their equipment. It wasn't being destructive. It was being desperate. Tried to contact Admiral to share her discovery, but he refused to talk to her. "Doctor has been classified as psychologically compromised," came the message from his communications officer. "The Admiral will not delay military operations based on her theories." Felt frustrated but not surprised. The military saw everything as a threat to be destroyed. They couldn't understand that sometimes the solution was communication, not weapons. She looked out the window of her lab at the creature floating in space. Its light patterns were dimmer now, and they moved more slowly. If her theory was correct, the creature was getting weaker. "I need to try talking to you," said to the creature, even though it couldn't hear her. Spent the next 6 hours trying different ways to communicate. She used the colony's main communication array to send radio signals, laser pulses, and even quantum transmissions. Nothing worked. The creature showed no response to any of her attempts. Then had a new idea. Maybe the problem wasn't that the creature couldn't hear her. Maybe the problem was that she was using the wrong language. The creature communicated with light patterns, needed to communicate the same way. Looked around her lab for anything that could produce the right kind of light. The colony's industrial replicators could create almost anything, including devices that produced specific wavelengths of light. "Computer, can the industrial replicators create a large-scale light projection system?" Affirmative. However, such a system would require significant power and would be visible from space. "Perfect, that's exactly what I want." Spent 4 hours designing and building a light projection system. She used every replicator in the colony and drained power from non-essential systems. By the time she finished, she had created a grid of light projectors that covered the entire surface of the colony's main platform. The system could create patterns of light that would be clearly visible to the creature. Now needed to figure out what message to send. She started with the obvious choice, prime numbers. But instead of the decreasing sequence the creature had been using, programmed her lights to show ascending primes. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17. Activated the system. Across the colony's main platform, thousands of lights began flashing in sequence. The pattern repeated over and over, ascending prime numbers. Watched her sensors carefully. For the first hour, the creature showed no response. Its own light patterns continued their slow, dim progression. Began to worry that her idea wouldn't work. Then something changed. The creature's light patterns suddenly became brighter. Not the angry red-orange lights from during the battle, but the gentle blue-green lights from when it first arrived. The patterns also became more complex, moving in waves across the creature's skin. Computer, analyze the creature's new light patterns. Patterns show mathematical progression, prime numbers in ascending order. His hands shook with excitement. The creature was responding. It was copying her message and sending it back to her. This was the first real communication between humans and an alien intelligence. But knew this was just the beginning. Sharing prime numbers proved that both species understood mathematics. Now she needed to try to convey more complex ideas. Modified her light display to show the sequence. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. Another famous mathematical pattern that often appeared in nature. The creature responded by showing the same sequence, but then it added something new. Its lights showed the golden ratio, the mathematical relationship that connected numbers to natural patterns like flower petals and seashells. It's not just intelligent, said to herself. It understands advanced mathematics and natural patterns. Tried a different approach. She programmed her lights to show simple geometric shapes, circle, square, triangle. The creature responded with the mathematical formulas for calculating the areas of those shapes. Communication was definitely possible, but was running out of time. Admiral's Nova bombs were scheduled to launch in 8 hours. Needed to find a way to explain that the creature was not an enemy. She thought about what message would be most important. The creature was dying and needed help. If could somehow convey that humans understood this and wanted to help, maybe the creature would move away from the colony before the bombs launched. Programmed a new sequence into her lights. First, she showed the decreasing prime number pattern that the creature had been using. Then she showed biological distress patterns from Earth animals. Finally, she showed a pattern that meant help in several different mathematical systems. The creature's response was immediate and dramatic. Its lights became much brighter, and new patterns began flowing across its skin. Complex mathematical expressions that didn't recognize at first. Computer, analyze and translate the creature's response. It took the computer several minutes to process the complex patterns. When the translation appeared, gasped. The creature was showing her star charts, maps of the galaxy with specific locations marked, but these weren't normal stars. They were positions in deep space between the galaxies where exotic matter could be found. The creature was showing where its people lived, or where they used to live. In the star charts, could see the story of a great disaster. Something had happened to the sources of exotic matter that the creature's species needed to survive. The star charts showed many locations that were now dark, empty of the energy signatures that meant life. The creature was alone, possibly the last of its kind, and it was dying. Felt tears in her eyes as she realized what she was seeing. This wasn't first contact with an alien invasion force. This was meeting a refugee who was asking for help. Stared at the star charts flowing across the creature's skin. Each point of light told part of a story she was only beginning to understand. The creature wasn't just showing her maps. It was sharing the history of its people. Quickly programmed her light display to show mathematical symbols for questions. Who, what, when, where. She hoped the creature would understand that she wanted to learn more. The creature's response was beautiful and heartbreaking. New patterns flowed across its skin, more complex than anything had seen before. The lights formed shapes that looked almost like pictures, but they were made of pure mathematics. Computer, record everything, commanded, and try to translate the mathematical components. As the computer worked, watched the creature tell its story through light and numbers. The patterns showed a species that lived not on planets, but in the empty space between galaxies. They were nomads who fed on exotic matter and dark energy found in the cosmic void. The creature's people had been ancient when humans first learned to make fire. They traveled through space in living ships that were also their bodies. Each individual was both a person and a spacecraft, capable of crossing the galaxy in their search for the rare materials they needed to survive. Saw images of dozens, maybe hundreds of these creatures traveling together through the darkness between stars. Their ship's bodies were all different sizes and shapes, but all shared the same beautiful skin that could create patterns of light. They talked to each other across vast distances using these light displays, sharing stories and knowledge and songs. Then saw the disaster that had destroyed them. The computer translated the mathematical description as something called a dark matter cascade, a rare cosmic event that happened when two galaxies came too close together. The gravitational forces created a chain reaction that consumed all the exotic matter in a huge region of space. Watched the creature show her how its people had tried to escape the disaster, but they needed the exotic matter to survive, and the cascade had destroyed their food source across thousands of light years. One by one, the creature's people had grown weak and died. The creature was talking to had been searching for new sources of exotic matter ever since. It had been traveling alone for what the computer calculated as roughly 3,000 Earth years. Felt overwhelmed by the sadness of the story. This being had been wandering through space for longer than human civilization had existed, looking for a way to survive. And when it finally found traces of exotic matter in human technology, people had tried to kill it. Programmed her lights to show symbols for empathy and understanding. Then she tried to explain that humans hadn't known the creature needed help. She showed mathematical expressions for ignorance, fear, and mistake. The creature's lights dimmed for a moment as if it was thinking. Then new patterns appeared. Was amazed to realize the creature was showing her forgiveness. It understood that humans had acted out of fear, not cruelty. But there was something else in the creature's message. It was getting weaker. The mathematical patterns showed declining energy levels and failing biological systems. The creature was dying, and it didn't have much time left. Looked at her chronometer. Admiral's Nova bombs would launch in 4 hours. She needed to contact him immediately, but she knew he wouldn't listen to her theories. She needed proof. Computer, compile a complete translation of the creature's communications. Include all mathematical proofs and astronomical references. Cross-check everything with our stellar databases. While the computer worked, tried to learn more about what the creature needed to survive. She sent mathematical questions about exotic matter, energy requirements, and biological processes. The creature's answers were detailed and precise. It needed specific isotopes of exotic matter that only existed in the quantum processors of advanced technology. The creature had been dismantling human equipment because it contained tiny amounts of these isotopes. But the amount of exotic matter in their orbital platforms wasn't enough to save the creature's life. It would only delay death for a few weeks. The creature had hoped to find more, but now it understood that humans didn't have the technology to create the materials it needed in large quantities. Felt desperate. She was talking to a dying being who had traveled across the galaxy looking for help. There had to be something humans could do. Computer analysis complete. Probability that the alien communications are genuine, 99.7%. Took a deep breath and opened a channel to Admiral's flagship. She knew he probably wouldn't answer, but she had to try. To her surprise, Admiral's face appeared on her screen. He looked tired and worried. "Doctor, you should have evacuated hours ago. My ships launched their attack in 4 hours. Admiral, please listen to me. I've established communication with the creature. It's not hostile, it's dying, and it needs our help." Admiral's expression didn't change. "Doctor, I've heard reports about your light display. Even if you have made some form of contact, the creature has already destroyed 2 of my ships and killed 18 of my crew. I cannot ignore that." "It was defending itself," insisted. "Look at the data I'm sending you now. The creature is a refugee from a cosmic disaster. Its entire species is extinct except for this one individual." Transmitted all her computer's analysis to the Admiral's ship. She watched his face as he reviewed the data. His expression slowly changed from skepticism to amazement. This is real first contact," Admiral said quietly. "Yes, and if you use the Nova bombs, you'll be committing genocide. You'll be killing the last member of an entire species that has existed for millions of years." Admiral was quiet for a long moment, could see him struggling with the decision. Military training told him to eliminate threats, but the data had sent proved the creature wasn't really a threat. "What do you suggest?" the Admiral finally asked. Felt a surge of hope. "The creature needs exotic matter isotopes, the same materials we use in our quantum computers and energy systems. If we could synthesize larger quantities, we might be able to save its life." "Can we do that?" Thought quickly. "Our manufacturing facilities can create small amounts of exotic matter for research purposes, but we would need much more powerful systems to create enough to help the creature." Admiral nodded slowly. "My ships have military-grade quantum processors. They're much more powerful than civilian systems. Could we use those?" "Maybe, but I need to ask the creature exactly what it needs." Turned back to her communication system and sent new patterns to the creature. She showed symbols for help, cooperation, and questions about specific requirements. The creature's response was immediate and excited. Its lights became brighter than had seen since the battle. Mathematical formulas flowed across its skin, describing exactly what isotopes it needed and in what quantities. "Computer, translate and cross-reference with our manufacturing capabilities." The results were encouraging. With the quantum processors from Admiral's fleet combined with the colony's manufacturing systems, humans could create about 60% of what the creature needed to stabilize its condition. It wasn't enough to completely restore the creature's health, but it would keep it alive much longer. Long enough, perhaps, for humans to develop better technology or help the creature find other sources of exotic matter. Shared the computer analysis with Admiral. "Admiral, we can't save its life completely, but we can give it more time." Admiral made his decision. "All right, Doctor, we'll try it. But I want you to explain to the creature that my ships will not lower their shields or allow it to come too close. My first responsibility is to protect human lives." Understood the Admiral's caution. She programmed her lights to show the creature that humans wanted to help, but that they needed to maintain safe distances during the process. The creature's response showed understanding and gratitude. It moved away from the colony to a position where it couldn't accidentally harm anyone, then settled into a stationary orbit. Over the next several hours, watched the most extraordinary project in human history unfold. Engineers and scientists from both the colony and Admiral fleet worked together to modify their quantum processors. They created a new type of exotic matter that had never existed before. The creature helped by providing detailed technical specifications through the light communication system had established. Its knowledge of quantum physics was far beyond human understanding. Working together, they created technologies that neither species could have developed alone. As the first batch of exotic matter was completed, felt nervous. They had followed the creature's instructions exactly, but there was no way to test the material before giving it to the alien. Lights showed the creature that the exotic matter was ready. The creature responded with patterns that interpreted as eager gratitude. It slowly approached the designated transfer point, moving carefully to avoid frightening the humans. watched through her telescope as the creature gently took the container of exotic matter. The container dissolved into the creature's skin and immediately could see changes. The creature's lights became brighter and more active. Its movements became smoother and stronger. The exotic matter was working. Felt tears of joy running down her face as she realized what they had accomplished. Humans and an alien intelligence had communicated, understood each other, and worked together to preserve life. But as she watched the creature's lights dance with renewed vitality, knew this was only the beginning of a much larger story. 3 months after first contact, stood in her new laboratory aboard Admiral's flagship. The room was 3 times larger than her old lab on New Geneva colony, filled with equipment she had only dreamed about before. But the most amazing part was the large window that looked out at the creature floating peacefully nearby. Had started calling the creature Aria because of the musical quality of her light patterns. The name seemed to fit. Aria's communications had the same flowing beauty as a perfect song. "Doctor, the morning briefing is ready," announced Lieutenant's new assistant. The military had assigned an entire team of communication specialists after they realized the importance of her work. Nodded and walked to the conference room. Admiral was there, along with Dr. Park and several other colony scientists. Representatives from Earth's government attended by hologram. The daily briefings had become essential for coordinating humanity's first diplomatic relationship with an alien species. "Status report," Admiral requested. Activated her presentation display. "Aria's health has stabilized. The exotic matter treatments we've been providing have given her enough strength to survive indefinitely. Her energy levels are now at approximately 60% of normal for her species." "That's wonderful news," said Dr. Park. "But can we continue producing enough exotic matter to maintain her health?" "Yes, but that's not the important question anymore," replied. "The important question is what we do next." Changed her display to show star charts similar to the ones Aria had shared months ago. But these charts had been updated with new information that Aria had been teaching them. Aria has identified 17 locations in nearby star systems where we can find natural sources of exotic matter. 3 of those locations are within range of our current technology. If we can establish mining operations there, we can produce enough exotic matter not just for Aria, but for new projects. Admiral leaned forward. "What kind of projects?" Smiled. This was the part of her briefing that always excited her most. "Aria has been sharing her people's technology with us. The advances in quantum physics alone will revolutionize human science, but the really important gift is her knowledge of other species." Display showed a new star chart, this one marking dozens of solar systems throughout the galaxy. "Aria has provided us with the locations of 47 other intelligent species. Some of them are more advanced than humans, others are less advanced. All of them have been trying to communicate with the galaxy for thousands of years." "And no one has been talking to each other?" Lieutenant asked. "Exactly. Every species develops their own communication methods. Radio, laser, quantum transmission, psionic projection, biological chemistry, mathematical light patterns. They're all trying to talk, but they're all speaking different languages." Dr. Park looked amazed. "So the galaxy is full of intelligent species who don't know about each other because they can't communicate." "That's right, and that's where humans come in." Changed her display again, showing the translation protocols she had been developing with Aria's help. "Humans have one advantage over most other species. We're curious about communication itself. We study languages, not just to talk to our own people, but to understand how communication works." Admiral was beginning to understand. "You want to turn humanity into galactic translators." "More than that. I want to turn humanity into galactic diplomats. Think about it. We're the first species to successfully establish communication with Aria's people. We proved that different forms of intelligence can understand each other if they're willing to try. His presentation showed the communication network she envisioned. We can create relay stations throughout the galaxy. Each station would be staffed by human linguists working with AI systems designed to translate between different forms of communication. Species that have been isolated for millions of years could finally talk to each other. "That's an enormous project," Admiral said. "It would take centuries to complete." "Which is why we need to start now, and Arya has agreed to help us." Activated a new display showing technical specifications that still amazed her. Arya's people developed biological computers millions of years ago, living machines that can grow and adapt to new situations. She's teaching us how to create them. Living computers, Dr. Park sounded skeptical. "Think of them as biological AI. They can learn new languages faster than any electronic system we've ever built. With Arya's help, we can create translation systems that adapt to species we haven't even met yet." Showed them video recordings of her latest experiments. In her laboratory, she had grown small biological computers that could already translate between human languages and Arya's mathematical light patterns. The computers looked like colorful flowers, but they processed information faster than the most advanced electronic systems on Earth. "The biological computers can also reproduce themselves," continued. "Once we perfect the design, we can send them throughout the galaxy to establish communication networks. Each computer will learn the local languages and connect new species to the galactic community." Admiral was quiet for a moment, thinking about the implications. "Doctor, you're talking about fundamentally changing humanity's role in the galaxy." "Yes. Instead of being conquerors or victims, we can be bridges. We can be the species that helps everyone else talk to each other." His personal communicator chimed, indicating that Arya wanted to talk with her, had learned to recognize the different musical tones that meant different types of messages. "If you'll excuse me, Arya has something she wants to share." Left the conference room and went to her laboratory's main window. Outside, Arya was creating the most complex light display had ever seen. Patterns flowed across the alien skin in waves of blue, green, gold, and silver. Activated her translation system and watched as Arya's message was converted into human language. Arya's translated voice said through the speakers, "I have wonderful news. My sensors have detected something unexpected." "What is it?" asked, using her light array to respond. "3 of my people survived the dark matter cascade. They are very far away near the galaxy's edge, but they are alive. I have been sending messages to them through quantum resonance. They are coming here." Felt tears of joy. Arya would no longer be alone, but then realized something else. 3 more creatures like Arya meant humanity would have the opportunity to learn even more about their species and technology. "How long before they arrive?" asked. "Approximately 8 Earth months, but there is something else. My people have been in contact with other species during their travels. When they arrive, they will bring information about 17 different forms of intelligent life." His heart raced with excitement. Humanity's role as galactic communicators was about to become much more important. Over the following days, worked with Arya to prepare for the arrival of her people. They designed new communication protocols and began developing translation systems for the 17 species Arya's people had encountered, but also spent time thinking about the larger implications of what was happening. 6 months ago, humanity had been a single-planet species with no knowledge of other intelligent life. Now, they were preparing to become the galaxy's first universal translators. Often thought about the moment when she had first chosen to try communicating with Arya instead of running away. That decision had changed everything. It had shown that sometimes the most powerful response to the unknown wasn't fear or violence, but curiosity and compassion. As stood at her laboratory window, watching Arya create beautiful patterns of light against the stars. She thought about all the species out there who were still alone in the darkness. Species who had been trying to communicate for thousands of years, but had never found anyone who understood them. Soon, because of Arya's gift and humanity's willingness to learn, none of them would have to be alone anymore. Activated her light array and sent a simple message to Arya, "Thank you." Arya's response was a pattern had learned to recognize as laughter. Then new words appeared on the translation screen. "Thank you for talking to me. Thank you for listening." Smiled as she realized that this was what humans would be remembered for throughout the galaxy. Not as the species that conquered or destroyed, but as the species that listened. The species that proved that understanding was always more powerful than force. In her final report to Earth's government wrote, "We have learned that the galaxy is full of intelligence, but very little communication. Humanity has the opportunity to change that. We can be the species that brings everyone together, not through conquest or technology, but through the simple act of trying to understand each other." The creature that our armies couldn't stop was stopped by conversation. Our weapons failed, but our words succeeded. This is the lesson we must remember as we venture into the galaxy. The greatest power we possess is not our ability to destroy, but our willingness to talk. Finished her report and looked out at Arya, whose lights were now pulsing in the slow, gentle rhythms that meant contentment. In 8 months, Arya's people would arrive, and humanity would take its first real step toward becoming a galactic civilization. But the most important step had already been taken, in the moment when she chose to see a frightened, dying creature instead of a monster to be destroyed. That choice had opened the door to a future filled with friends instead of enemies, understanding instead of fear, and communication instead of war. It was thought, a very human way to change the galaxy.